Welcome to Bird Barrier's instructional videos. Today we will teach you how to evaluate your product needs, and we will help to simplify the process of installing bird barrier products to your customer's building. Bird barrier products are all non-lethal. That means they do not kill birds. Our products are also non-chemical, which means you're not applying chemicals to buildings or to their food sources. They are also very humane, which means that the birds cannot be injured by bird barrier products. Bird barrier products are also long-lasting. All of them come with at least a 5-year guarantee, which means they will stay in place doing their job for many, many years. They also are all designed to blend with the architecture of your building. It is very important that passers-by or your customers cannot see the products once they are installed. These products will also pay for themselves in the long or the short term. They can do this by saving you expensive labor, which is being used to clean up bird droppings. They may save you money in products that are being damaged by bird droppings, and they may save you from a liability from someone getting sick or slipping and falling from bird droppings. As you may or may not know, bird droppings carry many dangerous diseases. We'll take you step by step through the entire product line and teach you how to install each product onto whatever surface you encounter. After today's studio explanation, we'll take you out and show you real jobs being installed on real buildings. In addition to this video series, Bird Barrier offers 6 other comprehensive support tools as well. First and foremost, our comprehensive product catalog, which takes you page by page through every part available for every system, including nuts, bolts, tools, etc. Second, we have a very comprehensive site on the World Wide Web, 136 pages deep with hundreds of pictures of products, solutions, different types of bird information. It's a very informative website and is very helpful to teach you more about bird control. Third is comprehensive product literature like this. 4-color brochures are available to you to help you sell your jobs to your customer. They show the parts, the names, no part numbers, no prices, just nice colorful pictures of the products in place. The fourth valuable tool that Bird Barrier has to offer is a comprehensive 2-day hands-on training program that teaches qualified individuals how to succeed in every aspect of urban bird control. We teach you about birds, teach you about safety, access equipment, evaluating the right products, dealing with the problems, installing, and making money at the business. It's a very important class. The fifth ingredient of Bird Barrier's support is site consultation. We can review photographs, plans and drawings, faxes, whatever the case, and help you evaluate the problem and help you evaluate a solution. The last support tool offered by Bird Barrier is unlimited toll-free assistance from either our West Coast California office or our East Coast office. To call the West Coast office, you would dial 1-800-503-5444, and the East Coast office is 1-800-NO-BIRDS, 1-800-662-4737. This is Bird Barrier stealth netting. Believe it or not, there is actually a net installed between me and you, which if you will zoom in, you can see that it's actually here. Stealth netting is the most effective solution to bird problems in many situations. It allows for total bird exclusion and can last for 10 to 15 years outside or 20 to 30 years if it is inside away from the sun. If the stealth netting is installed properly, if the color is chosen correctly, it should literally disappear on your building so that it is very hard to see by passers-by. And believe it or not, it is actually usually the cheapest solution to bird control problems. Now you can use StealthNet to net off entire building faces. Many times there are too many ledges on a building to protect any other way, and so the most cost-effective way is to net the entire building from roof to ground. You can also use it very commonly inside of warehouses, underneath the ceilings, when there are many, many ledges and beams and pipes and landing opportunities for birds. You can also use it over openings, like openings on the side of buildings for air conditioning systems, church steeples, things of that nature. It can also be stretched across an entire courtyard top. so birds are denied access into the courtyard completely. It is also used to protect ledges and many other types of applications. Now for some technical data on Bird Barrier StealthNet. First of all, it is a very highly dense UV stabilized polyethylene twine, which is made to exacting specifications in England. It is very resistant to the sun and very strong. The netting itself is knotted together as opposed to molded in one big mold. It is available in 3 different colors: black, white, or beige, which we call stone. And just introduced new translucent netting. It is also available in many different mesh sizes depending on the species of bird. We start off with a 2-inch netting for pigeons and larger birds. Then we have 1 1/8 inch netting for starlings, grackles, and other blackbirds. And 3/4 inch netting for sparrows, swallows, and small birds like that. We have 2 grades of 3/4 inch netting: heavy duty for areas over 25 by 25 and standard for smaller areas. We also manufacture 5-inch mesh netting for large aquatic birds like gulls and cormorants and other birds of that nature. StealthNet is available in 6 standard sizes and any custom dimension to match your job. In my hands here I'm holding a 25 by 25 net. That's 25 feet by 25 feet, and it's made of 2-inch black mesh. It's a very light netting and it's very easy to use. Each net will actually have a tag on it which will tell you the size and the mesh color and the mesh size. Our nets are actually pulled in together like a rope. If this is a 25 by 25 square, at the factory they take the 2 opposite corners, pull them tightly together, and then bundle it up like a rope and bundle it as you see here. So a 25 by 25 piece of net is not one big continuous roll of netting. StealthNet is very strong. Each strand has a breaking point of 44 pounds. It is also fire resistant and will melt at high temperatures but will not burn until it reaches 260 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, because the polyethylene does not absorb water, it will not rot, and it will not absorb water and sag over time like inexpensive nylon netting is prone to do. Nylon netting also is prone to fade in the sun over the years. The stealth netting is pre-stretched and heated in the manufacturing process, which helps for limited knot slippage after it is installed on your job. All bird barrier nets should be installed using Bird Barrier's proven techniques and hardware systems. This provides for a strong, discreet, long-lasting system. There is no other effective way to fasten netting to a building than the way we're going to show you today. The first thing you will notice when looking at this net is it is actually fastened to a cable which runs around the perimeter of the frame. This cable is tight and is fastened to hardware systems on the building itself. Then you'll notice that the netting is fastened to the cable with small metal loops called hog rings. This net is fastened with corner attachments up here, and then there are what's called intermediate attachments every 2 to 3 feet along the perimeter of the net frame. Now these are intended to keep the net from pulling the cable away from the wall. There is a lot of pressure applied with this netting, and if there were not fasteners against the cable every couple of feet, the cable would actually bow away from the building, which might allow birds access into the back. So we use what's called intermediate attachments on the side, run the cable through it, and that keeps all the cable nice and tight along the building. Imagine, if you will, this is the side of a building with a large opening, in this case about 4 feet by 5 feet. As you can see, we have run cable around the perimeter and then attached our netting to the cable, as we explained earlier, in a fashion that gives us a nice tight netting, squared off, very hard to see, and yet fully denies access to all birds. This is our goal. Now what we're going to do is step back a few minutes and show you how we put together this net job. This is a wood frame, as you can see, so we will install all of the wood hardware attachments that are available from Bird Barrier. After we finish installing the net system to the wood frame, we will also show you how to work with steel, stone, and sheet metal. First thing we're going to do is install our corner attachments. The corner attachments is where a cable ends or takes a corner, and it has to be the strongest part of the system. If the corner attachment fails, the whole net system will fail. They have to be very strong because we are going to apply great tension to the netting and to the cable with turnbuckles. We'll start with the upper corner, and we're going to drill out the hole. And then we're going to use a very strong galvanized screw eye in the corner. Now, all of Bird Barrier's hardware systems are available in both galvanized or stainless steel. This is, again, a very strong attachment. Okay, now we have all 4 corner attachments in place. This is the direction that the cable will follow as it takes each corner and makes a perimeter frame around our opening. The next step is to install the intermediate attachments. These are the fasteners which go around the perimeter of the net job in between the corner attachments. And we're going to start off with one of our small screw eyelets, which fits into this tool, and we're going to just drive it right into the wood. Now you can see the intermediate attachment is in place, and it's important that the hole in the head of the fastener is in line for the cable to run through it. Now we're going to go install the other intermediate fasteners around the perimeter of the job. We have now installed all of the corner attachments and the intermediate attachments around the perimeter of our net job. And the next step is to install the cable around the whole job. I have now pre-cut the cable, enough cable to go from the upper left corner down to the lower right corner. On this job, we're going to take a corner with the cable at this point here and terminate at this end onto the loop, and on this end up here with the turnbuckle. Now we could do this all with one cable if we wanted to, but the more corners you go around with one cable, the less tension you get around the other side, and we want to have a very, very tight cable. The longer the cable, also, the more stretch there is, and the more tension you take up, and you still don't get your cable as tight as you can, as tight as you want it. So what we want to have on this is very tight cable on 2 sides. As a rule of thumb, you want to go with a small turnbuckle on cable runs up to 25 feet, a medium-sized turnbuckle on cable runs 25 to 75 feet, and a large turnbuckle on anything over 75 feet. And again, the more corners you put into it, the more turns your cable takes, the harder it's going to be to get your netting and cable very tight. So we're going to start down here in the lower corner, and we have to attach our cable to this eye loop first. And we're going to do that using our copper ferrules and a ratchet crimper. And it's a very simple process. You want to thread your wire through your 2 copper ferrules, as so. Then you run your wire through your loop in your building and back through the copper ferrules. And you make a sort of a loop like that. And then we use our powerful ratchet crimping tool, and we'll squeeze it in place and crimp these ferrules down tightly around the cable. You want to have your 2 ferrules right next to each other if you can, so they're nice and tight. Now the next step is to thread our cable up through our intermediate attachment that we already installed, up around our corner attachment. Now we'll attach our wire, run it through our other 2 upper intermediate attachments, going across the top and ending up at the upper left side of the net job. Now the cable is in place on our upper portion and down the one side. We need to use a turnbuckle to fasten it into the corner of the building and to apply the tension to our cable. What we want to do then is open our turnbuckle all the way. Many people often don't open the turnbuckle far enough and are not able to take up enough tension. So we're going to put this up here, opened all the way, and hook it in to the building. Now we're also going to make a loop in this end of the cable on the turnbuckle the same way we did in the lower corner. We'll put the copper ferrules on. We'll run the cable through the loop in the turnbuckle, and then run the cable back through the 2 copper ferrules. Now, another mistake that's commonly made is crimping your loop at this point. Well, now there's no way to pull up your tension. So what you want to do is keep your turnbuckle hooked in, take up as much slack as you can so you can wrap the cable around your hand, pull it nice and tight, and then crimp it in place. Remember, the cable is going to stretch a fair amount, and you don't want to deny yourself the extra strength and the extra ability to tension that up with your turnbuckle. So I'm going to crimp each one of these ferrules twice. Make sure we get maximum holding pressure on here. And then when that is in place, we take our cable cutters and cut off the excess cable, leaving about a ½ inch sticking out. Now we simply tighten our turnbuckle. You want to hold the back loop so it doesn't turn. Turn the turnbuckle with your hand, and as it tightens up, you can feel the cable getting tighter to the point where it's a little bit tighter than a guitar string. You can use a screwdriver if you like to get a little bit more tension on it. You want to get this really tight. A couple 100 pounds of tension on here. And while you're doing this, of course, you want to watch and make sure that you're not pulling out your fasteners, that your corners are holding well, that everything held well along the way, and your cable is nice and tight all the way back to the point where it started. We're ready to install our last corner. We're going to hook on our turnbuckle, making sure it's open all the way up. We're going to thread our cable through the 2 copper ferrules, through the turnbuckle, back through the copper ferrules. Now, it's very important that you squeeze your ferrules properly. And I want to point out that these copper ferrules need to stand up tall, and then they need to be actually squeezed twice. So if you notice that the copper ferrule is over to the side of the crimping tool. So I'm going to squeeze it in place. And it's also a good idea to try and squeeze it with the smaller setting on the tool at least once or twice per ferrule. So here we go. I'm going to squeeze the other end now. Requires 2 hands. It's a little bit harder in the tighter one. Usually I squeeze it once with the big one, which is easier. That holds the cable in place. Then I go back and I squeeze 3 more times using the smaller setting. And you always want to use 2 copper ferrules as opposed to 1 because of the added strength. And there you have it. Take the cable cutters and trim off your excess cable, just like we showed you before. Tighten up your turnbuckle, holding the last loop and spinning the center of the barrel, which will take up the tension properly. And there you have it, a nice tight cable around all 4 sides. Now let's pause for a moment. We've got our cable in place in the wood frame. Let's pretend we have a concrete frame to work with now instead of the wood. So we've laid out this parking stop on our warehouse floor here, and what we're going to do is put in fasteners into concrete to show you how to deal with a concrete, cement, or stone job. Now first of all, we want to start off with the corner attachment. Now everything we're going to do in this requires drilling with a cordless hammer drill. And I'm going to demonstrate to you how to put in a bit into the hammer drill before we go any further. It's very important that you do this properly. On the chuck of the drill there are 2 grooves, as you can see there. And there are also 2 grooves on the side of this drill bit. Those need to slide into the chuck in line with that, and then you turn this and lock it in place. And now you can see the drill does not want to come out. With that in place now, we're going to drill our hole and put in an expanding net bolt into the far corner. Now you'll also notice that we ran a chalk line along the top of this beam here. When you have a long straight line and you want to get all your fasteners in a straight line, it's the best way to go. Now this is an expanding net bolt, and how this works is if you turn the head, it pulls a wedge up inside the sleeve and actually expands inside your hole. So you keep it loose a little bit, slide it in, and then simply turn the bolt and it will tighten up. And there we go, a couple turns, and it is very tight now. We're going to use a screwdriver here and turn this an extra half turn, and it's very hard. I can feel this thing is very well anchored in here. And we're going to go along and do the same thing at the other end. You notice how fast that drilled in. Now we're going to take a small air bulb and actually blow out the extra dust. If you don't get all the dust out, you might not be able to get your bolt in all the way. And then we'll do the same thing at this end with another net bolt. Now this one is spinning freely. I need to pull it out, tighten it up a little bit, and then as I put it in this time, it grabs. Use the screwdriver again, get it nice and tight. Now the next thing we're going to do is install intermediate attachments along the length of the concrete block here. We're going to show you 3 or 4 different ones which you can choose from when you want to do your net job. The first one is called the nylon anchor rivet and the split pin. This is a 2-inch long plastic rivet which gets hammered into a hole which you drill, and then this gets hammered into the rivet as such. So why don't we go ahead and install that one. You'll notice I've changed the bit. We now have a 6.5 millimeter drill bit. You'll notice how the hammer drill goes even faster in a narrower hole. The split pin and anchor rivet is a very discreet fastener. It's very low visibility and very easy to install and very strong. The plastic sleeve has been inserted, and now we just hammer the pin down, and that forces the plastic to actually expand inside the concrete. And there we have it. It's in line for the cable to run right through it. The next fastener is called the Hilti loop fastener, and this gets drilled in, and this is actually one-piece hammer-in fixture. You don't have to put in a sleeve first. And you drill an 8 millimeter hole. One thing you should be doing while you're drilling these holes is have your extra battery on your Hilti charging. So when this battery dies, you can just plug in a new one. Okay, so this one you just hammer on down like so, and it's not coming out. The difference being, of course, that this has a larger head on it is more noticeable. The next fastener we're going to use is called the net spike, and it's a small metal fastener with a small head, and actually you can see that the shank of the post has a bend in it, and that's what catches onto the concrete. So we use a 4.8 millimeter bit. And all these bits are available from Bird Barrier, and they're all labeled in the catalog as to which bit you need. Nice thing about using this fastener is it requires a very small bit, and it's very easy to drill it. So you want to have your head lined up properly, and you just hammer this in. And there it is, well anchored. The last fastener is the Bird Barrier multi-purpose cable bracket, and this can be used in either 2 directions. It can be placed down this way with the cable running right through this hole, or it can be placed like this with the cable actually hooked in here so long as the net is pulling in this direction. And we're going to bolt this down to the concrete using this concrete bolt. What we have to do first is drill our hole. Again, it's a nice small hole. And then the beautiful feature of this fastener is that we just slide this over our bit, turn off the hammer setting. All hammer drills can be turned off to become a regular drill. And then we just bolt this in to the concrete like so. And there we have the fourth very solid fastener. Now you've seen all four different intermediate attachments put into the concrete and the net bolts. Now what we're going to do, just like I did with the wood frame, is install the cable and the turnbuckles and run the cable through the fasteners and show you how it looks when it's all run and tight. So we do the same thing, run the cable through the ferrules, through the loop, and back through the ferrules again. And now we'll take our cable and thread it through the fasteners as we go, the intermediate attachments. Now if this were a long job and you were working on a ladder or a lift and attaching these every 2 or 3 feet, you probably would want to start by attaching your cable first at the one end, and then as you put your fastener in place, you thread the cable through so you don't have to come back and revisit the job again. And here we go. We run our cable through all the different types of fasteners that we've installed. And it's all in a straight line because we put the chalk line down. Hook our turnbuckle in at this end. See, I've allowed myself a couple extra feet of cable so that I don't go too short. Run the copper ferrules over the cable, through the turnbuckle again. Okay, the cable's in place, the turnbuckle's tightened. We're going to clip off our excess cable. And here, just a quick review of the hardware fasteners for concrete. First is the expanding net bolt down at the very end. There's one on each end. This would be used at the end of the cable and at the corner. If there was now a piece of concrete going up like a wall, we could attach our next cable into that. Of course, we want to bring this out closer to the edge. Our turnbuckle, same as with the wood, nice tight cable. The first intermediate attachment we come across is Bird Barrier's multi-purpose cable bracket, which we screwed in using a concrete drill bit and a concrete bolt. The next one is the net spike, the very small head. Again, the next one was the Hilti loop, which was hammered in once. Very nice attachment. And the last one is what we call the split pin and the anchor rivet. And you can see it's a very low profile fastener. All of these keep the cable nice and low, which is very important. If we were doing a job for small birds and the cable was up an inch, they could actually get behind the cable. And then we go off at the other end. We have one more net bolt at the far end, and again that expanded as we turned the head into the concrete. And there you have it, 4 different options. Some of these are going to be preference, what you might like to use after a while. Some are going to be used in different situations. It's good to have a couple of each in your toolbox. You may come into a situation where one works and the other doesn't, but most of the professionals out there have found the split pin works very well and the multi-purpose fastener works very well. So now we will show you what to do if you come across steel like an I-beam. You may also come across a lot of steel. Steel is very common in warehouses, over loading docks, in buildings and things like that. And if you have to attach a cable to steel, it can be very difficult without the right tools. This I-beam here can be done one of 2 different ways. First of all, you can take a I-bolt with nut and you can drill out at the end and thread your nut on and use these as end attachments, corner or end attachments. And we're going to put one on each end. Now the problem with these is that we had to first drill a hole through the steel, which takes quite a long time. It's okay to do that in the corners or end attachments, but you do not want to use that as a system for the intermediate attachment, which you would have to drill hundreds of them in many jobs. So what we're going to use is called a girder clip. This is a flanged clamp that can actually hammer onto the leading edge of an I-beam and hold your cable in place. Now you do not want to use this bracket down on the bottom with the hole. The cable actually runs through the jaws of this bracket like so, and then simply gets hammered on to the beam in this fashion. You do not want to hammer it on all the way, or else the cable will be tight and cannot play back behind there. And all you do now is crimp your cable on to this end like we've showed you a few times, and then onto this end you'll hook your turnbuckle and crimp your cable on to the turnbuckle the same way we showed you with the wood and the concrete. Now this girder clip is available in 4 different thicknesses depending on how thick your beam is. So you need to get up there and measure the thickness of your beam and then order the clips accordingly. These clips are available from 1/8 of an inch all the way up to almost a full inch. So that's one very good option. Another system for steel is to use our multi-purpose fastener, which we showed you earlier on the concrete, with a Hilti pin, which is fired in with a Hilti gun, which is this tool right here. Now what this does is there's actually a gunpowder charge inside this tool, and it actually fires the steel pin into the I-beam very quickly. And as you can see, it's one of our bird barrier parts, comes already assembled with the pin in place. It simply inserts into the end like so. Then we walk along down to the top of the beam. Of course, I want to emphasize that I'm wearing my eye protection again. You push this down and pull the trigger. Okay. Now we can come back and do one more fastener right in between the two as an intermediate attachment. So we're using, in this case, the same fastener as an intermediate attachment and as a corner attachment. You'll notice you have to push this tool in all the way down. It cannot fire unless it's done like that, so you can't actually shoot anybody with it. Okay, we're going to fire. 1, 2, 3. Now we have all 3 fasteners in place using the Hilti gun. Now we can take the same turnbuckle we've been using and actually use the end attachment and hook the turnbuckle right into it. The cable then fastens to the turnbuckle the same way we showed you. It runs through the intermediate attachment and bolts on to the last attachment with the same copper ferrules we showed you before. We won't go ahead and show it to you because we've showed it to you so many times already, but it's the same system. Now I do want to stress that this is a very powerful tool and should be used with great care. Hilti is a very reputable company, and their sales reps are located around the country, and they can come out and teach you how to use this tool so that you don't hurt yourself or hurt anybody else, even though accidents are very rare with this system. But it is available. Bird Barrier carries the tools and the charges and the pins, and we're more than happy to give you the Hilti phone number so you can get some help from them as well. So please be careful and realize that this is a powerful tool for you to get this type of work done. And one nice feature that Hilti offers is a 14-foot telescopic attachment for this, so you can actually stand on the ground and raise your gun up to the ceiling of a warehouse, so long as it's no higher than 15 or 20 feet, and put your fasteners in without getting up on a ladder or on a lift. It's a very nice feature. The last surface we're going to show you for the cable attachment is sheet metal. And again, this could be very common on top of a building where you're going across a courtyard perhaps. Sheet metal with over a piece of wood. And what you're going to use is our by now familiar multi-purpose fastener and sheet metal screws. And you simply place it down. We'll put it down at the corner like such. And again, you don't want to strip out the screw, so you stop when you get down to the bottom. We run along every 2 to 3 feet, and we repeat the process. If you find very thin sheet metal, you might want to use this fastener here, which has 2 holes in it for 2 screws, and 2 screws is twice as strong as 1 screw. So what you do is line that up in direct line of the cable. Grab a second screw and screw it down. And there you have it, much stronger than this one, which only has 1 screw. And what you can do now is use the cable running through these to the end, hook your turnbuckle into the end as we did with steel, and put one at the other end, and then you run your cable along in this fashion. Now the cable is fully in place. All the corner attachments are in, the intermediate attachments. The cable is tight on all 4 sides, the turnbuckle, the copper ferrules. We are finished with our installation of our framework. We're now ready to put up our netting. I have the netting already pre-cut. Today we're going to use the 2-inch black netting, which we showed you earlier. And we're going to use a specialized tool called a hog ring tool. This is the hog ring tool, and this is one of the most important tools in the netting system. It is used to attach the netting to the cable itself. And I'm going to show you how it works. You simply squeeze it together with your hands, and a small metal loop is formed which pops out at the end of the tool. And that is what's used to hold the cable to the netting. What we're going to do now is attach our netting to the cable. We want to make sure that we have our rectangle in the right direction, as we do here. And so what you do is you put the netting inside the tool and go up to the upper corner and squeeze it around the loop that is our corner attachment. And that's very simple. We're going to go along now and actually clip it right to the turnbuckle itself. And then moving along, we're going to hog ring our netting to the cable. And we'll move along a couple feet this way to establish the right direction. And then we're going to go down the cable, down the side a couple of inches. And you can see, obviously, this tool has a cartridge in it. It holds 50 hog rings. And it's a very easy tool to function. I'm again just getting that groove, that opening, wrapped around the netting and the cable and squeezing the tool. As you can see, it's very fast. Does a very nice job. So I'll make sure I'm established properly up in the upper corner before I get this intermediate attachment. And then we'll just keep moving along the top. You want to apply a slight amount of tension. You don't want to pull it too tight. The netting will tighten up quite a bit when we put the other side down. Now you'll notice I'm working from right to left. I'm right-handed, and one thing that works well for me is to hold out the net with my left hand, hold it along the cable, come under and scoop up the net to the cable as I go. Okay, the tool is now empty. We want to open the tool up, and to do so you push in the back end, these little metal things go in, and you lift up this little black tab here and open up the tool. Then you take a fresh sleeve of hog rings, slide them in from back to front, and just push the slip back inside and lock it in place. You want to make sure on the back that this little black tab is in the notch in place there. And there you have it. You're now ready to squeeze it, test one off, make sure it works, and it does perfectly. So I continue to hog ring across the top, and as I get to the far side here, I have to decide which is the string that's going to end up being my line down. I don't want to just keep hog ringing down this string. I need to actually take a corner and hog ring down a different line of the net. And it looks to me like this one here is going to be the line that's going to be perfectly aligned and give us a nice tight net installation. We don't want to pull it too tight. We just want it to be just right. So we'll go down and take a couple down here and make sure it's going to be nice and square. Now we're going to go back to the first side and continue to go down to the bottom. We want to get this side finished before we attach the netting down the cable on the far side. That's because this side doesn't have any more room to give, no more squares to adjust with. We're on the last square of the net. So we'll come down and get our netting hooked into the bottom attachment like so. Now we can either go along the bottom or we can go back to the other side and go across the top. So let's just go along the bottom for a while. And at this point, we should notice our netting starting to tighten up and look nice and square. That's very important with netting. You want it to be nice and square and straight lines and nice and tight so that it's not very noticeable from the ground. Now we're going to come back down the last side, hog ringing every square of the net. It's important to point out that on a smaller mesh net, which is a 3/4 inch net, you don't have to go every square if it's a small job. Another thing you'll notice is that the cable is very close to the building, and I'm using my left hand here to actually pull the cable away from the building a little bit to get the tool in there. In some cases the cable is really tight and it's very close to the building. You might want to use a screwdriver and pry it in there. Okay, we're coming down to the last corner. This is going to line up perfectly. Our corner here is going to attach into the corner attachment, and then one more hog ring on the cable, one more hog ring into the turnbuckle, and we are finished with our installation of our net. The last step on the installation of the netting is to trim off the excess net down along the bottom and across the side. And what you want to do is actually leave about a half or an inch of string after the knot. So usually just the best trick is to cut right in between the two knots on the netting, and it's very easy to cut using a pair of scissors like this. You just run along and cut as you go, and all the way to the top. One drawback to netting can be that you need to get access behind the net to get back to change light bulbs or maintain air conditioning equipment and such. Now there is a solution. Bird Barrier offers Stealthnet zippers, which can actually be hog ringed into the net and then opened to allow access. So what we're going to do now is install a zipper into this net and then show you how it can be used. Using the same hog ring tool that we attached the net to the cable, we're simply going to squeeze it around the zipper itself and hog ring down the side. The hog rings are sharp and they actually puncture the fabric on either side of the zipper. It's actually a very quick process. These zippers are available in 1 foot, 3 foot, 6 foot, and actually unlimited sizes up to 300 foot. They're also available in black or beige, so depending on the color of your building or of your netting, you can pick the zipper that will blend in the best with the background. So here we are. We're almost finished. Coming down to the bottom. Okay. Then we simply unzip the zipper, take a pair of scissors, and cut the strings behind where the zipper is, being very careful. Now we have is an opening that I can reach through, change a light bulb, do work on a building, whatever I have to do, work on the air conditioning equipment. When I'm finished, I just simply pull down the zipper and it's closed. Another option with zippers is to install another zipper parallel to it, which you can undo both of them and actually open up a large flap of netting to walk through, or in many cases even drive a car through. Another option for access is what's called the net clip, and it's a small piece of metal with a loop at each end which actually hooks on to the netting and replaces one string of net, which we're going to cut out of here. So what we do is actually clip these on to the net and go in a straight line. And these are available in black, as you can see here, or also in plain stainless steel, which is less visible on light colored backgrounds. They're also available for our 3/4 inch netting as well. So you go along and decide where you need your access. And I should point out that you put these in place after the net's installed, also the same with the zipper. Do not put these in place first, anticipating where you're going to want to get access. So there we have it, several net clips in a row, and now you just go along and cut the string in between each one. and then you come along and unclip. And now, just like the zipper, you can reach your arm through and change your light bulb or do your work or whatever, and it's very easy just to clip this back in place when you're done. Most workers, air conditioning guys, people like that, painters, roofers, would rather work with a zipper. They may not take the energy to put this back together, so the zipper may be the way to go, but both are options and they both work great. Now that we've shown you how to install StealthNet here in the studio, we're going to take you outside and show you several stealth netting jobs on real buildings. I'm standing outside of a retail establishment which has a sidewalk and a roof overhang over the sidewalk. In this case, lots of small birds like starlings and sparrows are landing on top of these small lips and on the conduit, on the chain, and on the lights and other ledges behind me, and making a mess on the ground down below. The only effective solution in this case is going to be to put a horizontal stealth net above our heads from this wood beam and over to the wall on this side. So the net will be horizontally above my head all the way along here. Birds will not be able to fly up underneath and get on any of these ledges. As you now know from the video, the first thing we want to consider is where to put our corner attachments. So we're going to run our cable along this line of mortar, which means we need to have a corner attachment right here in this corner. The cable is going to follow along around the corner, and we'll put another corner attachment here where the concrete meets the wood, and then our cable will follow along this line of the wood all the way around. So we will have cable all the way around here in which to fasten our netting. The first thing we're going to do is install one of our expanding net bolts up here in the corner in the concrete as one of our corner attachments. So I'm going to get my Hilti hammer drill here and set the guide for the right depth, and I'm going to drill this right in the corner. You notice how quickly that drilled in? Insert the bolt into the corner, turn it a couple times, and I will insert a screwdriver in here to get it another couple turns, and it's already very snug, and it's not going anywhere. Now we're going to drill the other corner attachment up next to the wood. We want to get as close as we can to the corner with this drill bit. That went in very easily. Take our net bolt, turn it a couple turns, put our screwdriver in, get it nice and tight. As you can see now, we have both corner attachments in the corners of the concrete here. We have to now put an intermediate attachment in. And on a sparrow job, you don't want any more than 2 feet in between intermediate attachments, so the cable will hold nice and tight against the building. And this just so happens to be exactly 4 feet here, so we will drill a hole right in this spot and put in our corner attachment, which in this case will be a split pin and anchor rivet. I'm using the 6.5 millimeter bit. I have the guide set. And there's a nice solid, very low visibility attachment. Now we're going to move along down the line here and attach an intermediate attachment every 2 feet. Now we've come upon a very common situation in running intermediate attachments, and that's where the surface changes, in this case from concrete to wood. So we need to, in this case, use a different intermediate attachment halfway down the line. And we also need to make sure with this piece of 2x6 sticking out that our cable runs right into the corner here so that the birds couldn't fly up into the corner behind the cable and get into the net chamber. So we're going to have to make sure we have some kind of a fastener right in the corner to run the cable to, and then we will run our intermediate fasteners right down the line here. Now, as you'll notice, we have already placed a chalk line. This is a good idea to make sure that your net is nice and straight. If you're running in the middle of a wall like we are here, you don't want your net to wave up and down like a wavy ocean. You want a nice straight net, which will be very hard to see that way. Here you'll notice the two intermediate attachments placed very close together to each other in this corner to make sure that the netting and the cable do not leave a big enough gap for birds to fly behind. Now that we've figured out how to keep our cable close to this corner on both sides here, we're ready to start putting in our intermediate attachments into the wood and just move on down the line. And we're going to put these every 2 feet all the way down this 60-foot side here. Now we're back in the original corner where we started. Here you can see the corner attachment. We finished our intermediate attachments down the left side. It's time to go down the right side and put our fasteners in on this 2x4 here. So we're going to use the same wood fasteners and simply drill them into place right in the middle of this beam. And now we'll go along and put these every 2 feet down this direction, and our hardware will be ready to go. We now have all of our hardware in place. The corner attachments, the intermediate attachments in wood every 2 feet, and in concrete every 2 feet, going down both sides of the opening. It's now time to put on our cable and get ready to start putting in the netting. So just like we've done a couple times already, you run the cable through the copper ferrules, through the net bolt in the corner, and back through the copper ferrules, and that's nice and solid. Now I've already pre-cut this cable, which we're going to run down the side, and all we have to do now is walk along and actually thread it through every intermediate attachment. We're now down at the other end of the cable system. Time to hook in our turnbuckle, run our cable through the ferrules, through the turnbuckle, and back through the ferrules. You'll notice that the turnbuckle has been opened up all the way. Take a few wraps around the hand to get the cable nice and tight. As I look down the line of the cable and I make sure that nothing is bound up along the way, squeeze it in place. And there's the cable now, nice and tight, ready for the netting. We're often asked how tight to make the cable, and the answer is it can never really be tight enough. As tight as you can get it is better. As you can see here, it is very tight and it's very close to the building. Just about 1/8 of an inch from the building and a couple hundred pounds of tension. So when you put the net on here and pull away, it might back out a little bit, but it will not make a big enough opening to let birds back behind. That's the key thing. On a sparrow job like this, you want to make sure that it's very tight and no big gaps for birds to get behind. Okay, we're up in the upper right corner here. We're going to start where this turnbuckle is and the corner attachments, and I have the net up here with me, just the end of it, and where the pink twine is, I can see it's absolutely a corner, and then I have the tag down the long side, so I know that's the long way down. So what we're going to do is take the hog ring tool, grab the first corner, take it into the corner bolt, the attachment there, and there it is, so we're established. Now I'm going to go down to where the long side tag is and take one square and hook that into the cable so that now I know this is the long side of the net and we have to work down in this direction. Now as you can see, we have the corner done and one hog ring over here. Next thing is we're going to go and start along the line. We're going to go every other square because it's a small net job with the standard netting. Not going to take a lot of strain, and we're just going to hog ring the net to the cable, in this case to the turnbuckle. Want to hog ring the turnbuckle as well. Every other square we're going to go along, as you can see, and I'm going to hold it out here before me and hog ring it, pull it along, not too tight, just snug. And there's our first 1.5 feet now attached to the cable like so. Eventually, of course, we're going to pull the net up over our heads like this, and that's what it's going to look like attached to the cable. Sometimes your cable is really close to your building, which is where you want it. To make your hog ringing easier, you can put a screwdriver in and pull it out a little bit. So what we're going to do now is just keep on going down I'm going to hold the net out in advance of where I am hog ringing, about a foot, and then I just go along, grab every other square, and hog ring it up to the cable, just like so. Off my left shoulder over here is the corner where we started attaching our net. Then we followed along this back wall, and you can see at this point we have a cable. Now this is the point where this big overhang takes a corner. So we have netting going down this direction and netting going down this direction. So what we've run is a cable here because we don't have net that comes in along big squares like this. So you've actually got to cut off your corners in such a case. So the cable runs along here, and now this net and this net are going to meet at this corner. And as you can see now, someone has already hog ringed this net along this cable along to the wall at this point. So we're ready now to get to the wall and keep on hog ringing down the cable as we go. Now our goal is to attach the net to this side of the cable and make the net nice and tight and squared above our heads as we go. The straighter the lines, the better the net is going to look when it's all installed. So now we're just going to run along here. As you can see, I've got my screwdriver tucked in place again, and we're just going to go along and grab every other square and hog ring the net to the cable just like we did down the other side. Now another element of putting the net up on this side is trimming off the net as we go. Remember, we're going to use this piece further down the net when we're finished. So we're going to go along here. We don't want to come back and move our ladders and do this twice. So what we'll do is we'll hog ring about a foot, and then we'll cut about a foot using these scissors. So there you can see a nice straight cut line. Now we'll move our screwdriver over a couple feet and continue to hog ring on the same line of netting. Now what you can see here above my head is the first 33-foot section of the net is complete, and it's hog ringed off on both sides. So now what we have to do is start hog ringing down to our cable on this side. We'll continue this direction, and then we're going to hog ring square for square our net to the other net. So now I know again that this is the long side going down here, and I'm going to use the hog ring tool and loop this in place to this cable, and we'll go down a couple squares and just get it in place so we know which direction we're going in. And now we'll come out and grab a square of the net, and we're going to go the same way every other square here and hog ring this seam in place so birds will not be able to fly up between the cracks. You can see we've come out from the right. I'm going to grab both sides of the net with my left hand and come up under and grab both squares, every other square, with the hog ring tool and make my loop. See, very fast, very efficient. Now that I've finished making the seam behind me over here, I'm just going to continue on down this wall, hog ringing every other square until we get down to the corner. Now as you can see, we've finished this side. We've hog ringed the cable and the netting together. Every two squares, we've hit this corner here. Now we have an odd triangle here at the end of this, which we don't want to do right now. We're going to go back, pull the other side across, get it all nice and tight, and when both sides are finished to these corners, then we'll come in and have the two weird angles meet each other. Now you can see here's where we seamed that first piece to the second piece. We've already done the side down there. We're going to now attach our hog ring to our cable, every other square, and go down and finish off this side. Now as you can see, we've finished off. The cable and the netting are attached down the right and the left side of this corridor. The last thing we have to do to finish it off is deal with this sort of odd angle at the end here. We want to make sure that our net stays nice and straight and tight looking all the way. So what I'm going to do is look down the net, and we're going to attach a corner, a square of the net, to this corner right here. Make sure it's nice and tight and squared off, and that will be where we will establish ourselves and work off down the other direction. Okay, so now the netting is attached in the corner, the lines are straight, and as we go along and pull this and attach it to the hog ring, to the cable, we will have a nice straight net. Now the trickiest part about working with this squared off net is when you get an odd angle. If it's a perfect 45 degree like this might be, then you can go in the knots in the corners with your hog ring in a straight line. If it's not a perfect 45 degree, you have to adjust and lose a square once in a while. So we're going to go along and start attaching our net to this cable. And as you can see now, it's coming out pretty square. So it should fill in and end up looking just like the rest of the net. I'm going to go along in every other corner of the net. Looks like I might be pulling a little too hard, so I'll adjust. And I'll go every square now on a different line. And as we go along, oh, missed one there. As we go along, we'll see, hopefully, a nice square net. So I think you can see above me now. This looks pretty nice and tight, and the lines are going off in the correct directions. The next thing to do, now that we've got this all hog ringed in place, is to trim off the net. And we're just simply going to go across in a straight line, hopefully square to square, nice diagonal so it doesn't look too uneven. And we'll go across and trim this off, leaving a little bit to hang below. And then one thing you can do with that is just tuck it up a little bit like so. So it's not too noticeable. In this case it fits nicely into the groove in the concrete and the mortar between the bricks. Go along and finish cutting to the other side. Above my head now you can see the corner, the two diagonal sides behind me, and you can see the net is fairly squared and looks nice from a distance. You barely notice it, just like the rest of the job. So that's what a corner should look like if possible. Now that we've finished installing the net, the last thing to do is to put a zipper in place. Because there's a large panel here behind a sign, a neon sign, which is on the outside of the building, we're going to install a zipper here so that workmen can get up and work on the equipment. So it's very simple. We're just going to go along here and we're going to hog ring the net to the fabric of the zipper, every other square, and then what we'll do after we've got it in place, we'll simply open the zipper, cut the net, and then we're done. So we'll go along. We want to be symmetrical, have this fastened the same square on each side so it doesn't look too unattractive, and we just move along, and you can see it's very easy to unzip it and zip it back up. Now let's say the sign maintenance man shows up and wants to work on the back of a sign. All he's got to do is undo this zipper. It's about 25 feet long. And there he has, up through the net, full access to take off his rear panel, change his bulbs, do whatever he wants to do. And when he's finished, he just walks along and zips it back up. And there it is, completely safe and finished. We have zippers available in 1 foot, 3 foot, and 6 foot lengths, in black or beige, and also in any custom length from 1 foot to 300 feet. Here you can see one of Bird Barrier's 3 foot black zippers, hog ringed in place. You can simply reach up, work on the light, change the bulb, and then zip it back up when you're finished, and you're all done. Well, it's a couple hours later, and we have now finished installing our net system. It's about 80 feet long and 7 feet wide, and it took about 4 hours to put up the entire system, and we have now complete exclusion from birds trying to fly underneath and get up to any of the landing surfaces up above our head now. As I said earlier, this is the black 3/4 inch standard grade netting, and it's been fastened to cables all the way around the perimeter, and it is a very effective and very attractive job. We're on the roof of a large department store in Southern California. We're on a 60 by 60 foot raised up roof above the entire department store, and we're in the enclosure here where they keep the air conditioning equipment and other machinery to run the facilities. This part of the building has had a very serious problem with gulls and pigeons for many years, As you can see, there is paint that's been destroyed on top of these air covers and lots of droppings on them for many, many years of abuse up here. We're going to suspend this net. We're going to have it about 4.5 feet off of the roof so that air conditioning maintenance people can still work up here. But we're going to suspend the whole net system with posts like this that have been welded onto a flat piece of steel at the bottom. Now we want to be very careful. We can't drill holes in this roof because it's a gravel roof over a rubber substance. So we're going to just place these posts on the roof and then support the post very well with cables from the top so the top won't be able to go anywhere. This is galvanized. It's been welded together. It's a bird barrier product. We do manufacture and sell these brackets and posts like this, and it's all been galvanized after it was welded, so it will not rust. And there's also a hole that's been drilled at the very bottom of this so that when water fills up the top of this pipe, it'll drain out the bottom. We're going to run 2 cables on this job. The first one is going to be an outer perimeter cable that's going to run along the outside of this lip, and you can see we have fasteners already installed here every 2 or 3 feet that is going to hold the cable in place. The next thing is we're going to run cables from the top of these posts along the same straight line and tension it very tight. So what this net will do is going to come up from here to the top of the pole, hit the cable, and then make a flat roof for us. We're going to start putting in our cable and the attachments to attach the cable to. So what we're going to do, this post is positioned where we want it, about 3 feet in from each corner, and you can see the top of it here. And we need to run a back cable from the top of this post down to the wall, another one over here, because we're going to run cables in the opposite directions. We don't want this post to pull over. We're going to screw in one of our U-shaped cable fasteners up top here. There's one screw in, we'll put the other screw in, then we'll tighten them both down. There, it's a nice solid fastener, not going to be going anywhere. We'll run our cable through these fasteners all the way around the building, 60 feet on each direction. All right, we have our post position 3 feet back from the wall, and as I said earlier, we're not going to glue these or bolt these in place. So we're going to run a support cable now that runs from the top of the post down to a bracket that we've already installed here on the outside. So just like you saw earlier in the video, we're going to run the wire through the copper ferrules, through the attachment on the outside of the building, and then back through the copper ferrules. I'm going to leave a bit of a bigger loop this time so I don't have to lean over the edge of this building and possibly fall down and hurt myself. And then you go ahead and squeeze the next one. And as you will remember, we always want to put 2 crimps side by side. And there's a very nice looking crimp and a very strong loop. So we'll move up to the top of the pole now, and we're going to attach this cable up here. So I'll cut myself about an extra foot. Now we're not going to use a turnbuckle on this because this is a short piece of cable, and we're going to attach it, and then we're going to apply a turnbuckle running off to a post across the roof, and that's how we'll get our tension. So we're going to make sure we get this really nice and tight by hand, and that way we can save some turnbuckles on this job. So we're going to run the cable through the ferrules, through the holes that we've already drilled. We'll run back through the ferrules, and we want to pull it really nice and tight. And we can actually pull it back just a little bit because when we apply the tension on the other side, it'll flatten this bracket out for us. See, I got the ferrule over to one side. It's nice and tight, ready to go. Now you can let go. And we squeeze each ferrule twice. Cable's all put in place now. Cut the excess. And if we pull this thing in this direction, you can see it's going to hold really nice and tight. All right, we're about to start putting up our support cable. As you can see, we've taken our posts and moved them in from the edge of the roof, now 6 feet. The customer, it turned out, was worried about visibility down from the ground, so we brought the posts back in, and now you'd have to be very far away from this building to be able to see the post at all. This should be a very almost invisible installation here. So what we're going to do now, we have the back cable supported. We're going to run a cable from this post along to the next post, and what we're going to do is put a grid frame pattern in place, and we're going to put them all in with their turnbuckles, keep them a little bit loose, and when they're all in place, we'll start tightening them up evenly. Now I'm going to walk along and play the cable out behind me as I go. And then at this end, turnbuckle's already hooked in place. Use the cable cutters. Leave myself an extra foot or so. Run the wire through the ferrules just like we've done before. We don't want to get it too tight because it'll pull the next post over towards us, and that isn't anchored yet. Okay, the other end of this cable is now attached to the other post, and I've got the cable wrapped around my hand. I want to get it pretty tight by hand, and then I'm going to squeeze it in place here. And once I get one done, I can let go because that's going to hold the cable. Get these 4 squeezes done. Always want to have your copper ferrules sitting right next to each other if you can. It's the most visually appealing. Take the cable cutters, cut off your excess cable. And now what we're going to do is tighten up the turnbuckle. And what you want to do, as you turn the turnbuckle in the center, it pulls the 2 threads